we, in our previous segment, we were talking about Walter Dean Meyer's book Monster and the film adaptation Monster / All Rise. And now we're going to be talking about Ntozake Shange. So that was sort of the middle / high school text. And so now we're going to go to a text that I think every Black woman in every college across the nation has performed this at one time. Truly, for colored girls who have considered suicide when the rainbow is enough. And two adaptations, actually a PBS adaptation in the 80s, directed by Os Scott, and of course, Tyler Perry's 2010 adaptation for colored girls. Now, I remember being young, like, and you and David might have been born, but I remember seeing commercials for the play for colored girls. And the reason it registered was because the title was so long and interesting. I was like, colored girl, what? For colored girls who have considered suicide? What is all this, right? And then I think the first time I read it might have been high school. And I do remember the PBS televised version. And I remember reading it, and I remember it felt depressing. And then when I got to Barnet and realized that Ntozake Shange graduated from Barnet, I was like, oh, let me take a new look at this.
Exactly.
Oh gosh. I remember also reading about how, according to Ntozake Shange, Black men really came for her and didn't like how even though Black men are barely in it, maybe in the filmed versions there's an actual male,
right,
and the staged versions there's an actual man in there, but in the text they're just speaking about men. There's no man in. So men just didn't like the way they were being dragged, I guess, in the book, because a lot of it is tragic,
right?
But at the end, there's this upswing, and the idea that I found God in myself and I loved her. I loved her fiercely. That's sort of like the lesson that all of these women represented by different colors were trying to get to, right? The reason they were going through all these things, not to excuse other people's behavior, but it was because they lacked an understanding of who they are.
Yeah, I was going to say themselves first.
Right. And I can also see how, patriarchy would not like it, because we have been taught God is a man. God is male. Oh, you refer to God as male. God is father. And anything else is somehow pagan. It's like, well, no, actually, because when you go back, way back, God is both. And actually, there are still, you can't erase everything. There's still remnants of it in the Bible, where God is described as mother, right? So for us to, look at anything that sort of equates feminine energy or feminine attribute as pagan or, blasphemous, it is ridiculous. So,
I mean, I think it's super ridiculous just for the fact that we're vessels.
Right. That's all we are. That's right.
Right. I can't dispute nature or biology. It's not equal. We are vessels, and this is why Earth is called Mother Earth, because it brings forth life. So those ideas alone should have men being very reverent, as opposed to you know.
Right. That's right. That's right. And you know, needing to tap into that, right? Needing to tap into their own feminine energy, because we both have both, right?
Yes.
Matter of fact, that's probably what scares men, women who have too much of that masculine strength, that masculine energy. I can't dominate you. Like, you couldn't dominate me if I didn't do. You can't dominate.
And why would you want to?
Would you want to? Right.
Why would you want to?
Right. So
anyway, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, but I mean, but all of that is, that's what the book used to make. You know, women would be like passing around their tattered, girl, because, and Ntozake Shange herself has said in interviews that she's just amazed that she's seen this performed all over the world. Like a group of Jewish women in Israel, you know, did it, you know, it's just performed all over the world. But so before I get to Tyler's version, I think some of the main things about changing from the text to the stage screen. So what I didn't know, and I found this out from interviewing her for our alumni magazine, was when it was originally performed in San Francisco before it got to New York, the women were not all Black. There were, you know, Latina women, there was an Asian woman. So colored girls literally meant all the women of color, right?
Yeah.
And she said when it got to New York, when Joseph Papp said, yeah, we're gonna put this up. He was the one who said, you know, all the women need to be Black because no one will understand it if they're all different races or different. And she was like, okay. And so from then, that one decision has influenced how we've seen it, you know. So for instance, the PBS version, all the women are Black, right? And definitely in Tyler Perry's adaptation, all the women are Black. So that's one significant change. And she wanted, before she passed, and a funny little aside, I was teaching this in my senior seminar course on race and gender in adaptation. And this was one of the books that I used in the very first semester, fall 2018. And she passed away in fall 2018. So the film, I went to see it by myself at a theater, maybe the second showing. And as women were coming out, they were like in tears. And I was like, oh my, what am I getting into? And, you know, I went in with an open mind. And I still say to this day, this is Tyler Perry's best film. And he was afraid to do it. He was approached about doing it. He said, no, I don't want to do it. Because he didn't want to get dragged for messing up. You know, it's like, hey, here's a Toni Morrison book, Sharon, adapt it for film. Ooh, okay. But you know, people are, sometimes when you're on that autopilot where it's just, anytime you mention Tyler Perry, you just go into total negative mode. And I was like, no, did he? Again, when we talk about the positives and negatives, there were some negatives, but I think it took those qualities that you say you try to impart upon your students in reading something and really breaking it apart. He had to really read the poem more than once.
Right.
And he rearranged it because a lot of the dialogue attributed to certain women in the text, he switches it, right? So the choreo poem, it's an ensemble, but Lady in Red's story is the one, you know, it's her children that get, you know, thrown out the window. I'm not spoiler alerting anything.
No, right.
If you don't know this by now, then you just know. Right. So it's, you know, Lady in Red had, you know, the good lines, so to speak, if use film lingo. But he had to break it apart, rearrange things so that it fit the story that he created.
Right.
To incorporate the and I thought that that alone would get people, oh, don't touch it, it's but people have been playing with it for decades.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so for him to have done what he did, I think was brave, and I think he really did a good job. So
what do you think he did best?
Well, there's one scene, and it's really Lady in Red in the text. That's the poem that begin, I'm a deliberate coquette. And, one of the lines is, I want to be unforgettable. And, it's like, to make men pay, all the men that rejected her, mm-hmm. if she's unforgettable, then they will forever pay for having not,
exactly.
Chosen her or whatever, right? But he gives it in the film to Tangi, or Lady in Orange, played by Tandy Newton. Mm-hmm. And the characters that he created, Gilda, Felicia Rashad, and Alice, the Lady in White, Whoopi Goldberg. So in the film, Whoopi Goldberg is the mother to Purple and Orange. Purple is Tessa Thompson. Mm-hmm. Orange is Tandy Newton. And so there's one scene where they have this confrontation where Orange has taken her sister Purple to get an abortion. Mm-hmm. Lady in White, Whoopi Goldberg, finds out and comes over to Lady in Orange to beat her behind, right? And so it comes out, Tandy said, no, you made me do it.
Right.
And she said, I was with you. And, Purple had to do it by herself. So they have this conversation, and then they break into the poems. And so Orange is saying I'm a deliberate coquette. And then Whoopi's character is reciting a different part of the poem, and they're reciting it together. Mm-hmm. And it just weaves. And I described it as, it was so powerful because it revealed so much character. Orange is pain. Both of them are in pain. Mm-hmm. And as they're both reciting their respective portions of the poem, right. Neither of them are listening to each other.
Right.
Right. And I said, isn't that how it always happens?
Exactly.
When you're in an argument, this is my pain, and nobody's listening to the other. Mm-hmm. And after that scene, the theater applauded. They just, and I said, yes, because it was powerful. It was very powerful.
Right. How you see, I think what's important for filmmakers is to get that right. How do I make the essence of this written work come alive on the screen? Yes. And I know that sounds very, cliche, I guess, but that is it. That's it in a nutshell. Like,
right.
And so I even think that Tyler Perry, who's clearly not a woman, he has to get into
although he's played one on film.
Exactly. Very well, I might add. But I think that deserves a certain amount of applause as well, because it's like, either you have to be a woman at heart or in your soul, or you have to really listen and pay attention to women, and what they think and what they go through, and you know, how they express their joy and their pain. And I'm not saying, you know, one particular way for all women. I'm saying the variety of women, all of my experiences with women has taught me this or shown me that. And here's how I'm going to have to cultivate that to bring it, to make it believable on screen.
Right, right. And comparing that to the PBS, the way it was framed, it starts out with Ntozake Shange, who's in her own production, as she was in her own stage play. She's sort of talking to her daughter, and actually, I think the little girl in here really is her daughter. So she starts out sort of talking to her daughter, then you get into the unfolding of the text, which stayed more faithful to the actual choreo poem than Tyler Perry did. But so it was a little bit more literal. But then it also ends with Ntozake Shange and her daughter. So it's like told as a frame story where she's sharing with her daughter all of these experiences, and the end is, you know, but life doesn't have to be that way for you. You can learn from this and love the God in you, love her fiercely, whatever. And with Tyler Perry, he unfolds it differently. It's not a frame story. It's all of these women happen to, most of them live in the same building, or they're related in some way.
Vignettes or something, you know.
Right, right. And so he actually breaks it out of that sort of vignette style of the stage play, the text, and creates, you know, creating relationship so that it works on film, right? But part of it is those actresses. Child.
See?
Loretta Devine,
I know.
All of her stuff in the film, but at the end where somebody took all my stuff.
Yep.
That awakening where you're like, hold up,
right?
and I think that's what it's important for women to realize. It's like, okay, yeah, not excusing you for being a jerk, but I didn't have to give all my stuff to you. And the thing is, you don't, and the right, thank you. And the actual word is, and you don't even know you have it.
Right. Oh my God.
So that means, yeah, it's not you. So, and so that's powerful.
For me to be having today.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. But so that positive, just Loretta Devine infuses it with a certain posture and attitude that you're like, yeah, that's right. Right. And so the flip side of that is, you know, a Tyler Perry-ism is, because his niche market has been, I don't want to say Bible Belt, but he knows that a large part of his market is Southern church-going Christian women. And so he always has some sort of a moralistic through line, right? And sometimes that can inject some patriarchal judgment of how women behave and what women should be doing, right? So one of the scenes that was a little controversial was where Gilda, Phylicia Rashad's character, who doesn't exist in the text, he creates her, right, for this film. Lady in Brown, what's her name? Kimberly Elise. She's the one who's living with Bo Willie, the vet who is not taking his meds, and she's the one whose children get thrown out the window, not Lady in Red in the text. But after that tragedy, and Lady in Brown / Kimberly is despondent in her apartment, and Gilda, Felicia Rashad, comes into the apartment. I see you didn't eat. She opens up the curtains. She's like, you got to get up.
Right.
And Brown's like, but my children. She's like, ah. She said, you know what? You had to have stopped that. You needed to take care of that long before them children got thrown out the window. Right. And Brown says, you're saying this is my fault? And she's like, I'm not saying it's all your fault, but some of it is your responsibility. And people had a problem with that. Like, here's Tyler Perry blaming women again. And I'm like, this is where we, again, because basically what that scene is just another iteration of you gave somebody all your stuff.
I was going to say what we allow and what we give away.
Right.
And that can't, you know, and you have to learn to take accountability.
Right.
Because how will you ever move past that? Right.
You knew he was crazy. You don't want to marry him? Get up, go somewhere. Go live with Gilda. Go in. He can't get in there.
Right. Make a way.
He don't have the key. Right. So, but again, because she was abused by Bo Willie, this idea that your sense of self is so demoralized that you can't, that it takes something drastic and tragic
like that
for you to say, woo, right? What I liked about the film is we saw how each of the women cared for each other in helping them heal. I liked that. The abortion situation, well, he creates Lady in White to carry that burden, to carry that moral Christian version. And what's ironic about that is that he sort of pokes holes in it. It's like, so do you really even believe it, Tyler? Or do you just know this is my audience, I need to play into this, right? So in creating this Whoopi character who is all Christian stereotype thrown on her, and how it damages her daughters and their relationship with each other, you know, I think it said a lot of good things. Even Janet Jackson as Lady in Red, the new poem about HIV that Ntozake Shange added in the early 2000s, maybe. You know, her character has to deal with this husband who's on the down low. So, you know, he's weaving in all these issues specific to women, particularly that Black women, maybe still, but at one time, incidence of HIV among Black women was the highest growing demographic, and people would attribute it to men who were sleeping with both gender, the two cisgenders, men and women. They were on the down low, right? And somehow that exacerbated cisgender straight Black women in us developing HIV. So, you know, he's trying to work in, sort of like Monster, trying to work in these social issues in a way that's more overt than in the text, right? So in the text, you can read it and you can read these women's pain and you can kind of empathize and look at your own circumstances. Whereas the film is giving you the specific circumstances.
And I think, you know, a lot of times the film tries to answer the why question, you know, because people, I think the feeling is if I leave the theater and I don't have any answers, then it wasn't a good movie.
Wow. Okay. That's interesting. Yes. Yeah. We don't want to feel, like we want to feel some, Right.
You
We
know what
want
I
to
mean?
feel some resolution. Yeah.
It's going to end right there, you know. So yeah, you know, I mean, people do that
Right.
all the time. So I think that that's part of, you know, the challenge for filmmakers. Like, how do I leave the audience with, you know, some kind of closure,
Right.
but really, you know,
Right.
just a little bit of guessing, but because I think, like, part of what Tyler is doing is answering the why questions. Like, well,
Right.
why is
Right.
this character that way, or this woman that way? Why
Right.
does she feel thus and so? Or
Right.
why do women blah blah blah? Why do women give away all of their, I don't even want to say power, because then it sounds, you know, dominant, and it's
Right.
not even about that.
Right.
It's, you know,
My
just,
stuff, my
yeah,
life, my
yeah. Why don't we just give it all away?
right. Right. Right.
You know,
Just to be loved. I'm like,
right. So and approved of and acknowledged.
right. Right.
Why I love you so much, baby, because you just,
Right.
you know, and it's just like,
Right. Right. And you know, the thing that I've had to learn is,
me loving me enough,
yeah.
you
Yeah.
know.
No,
So,
right. Well, I found
and it's
God in
not
myself, and I loved her
right.
fiercely.
So
Yeah. Yeah.
um,
So there were the Tyler Perry isms that got overlaid, and that was, Ntozake Shange has said that's why she sort of resisted him doing the adaptation, because she's seen his other films and she sees this sort of moralistic,
right.
Christianized sort of thing that judges women or villainizes women in certain ways. And it's interesting because Ntozake Shange's, all of her books and papers are now housed at Barnard.
Okay.
And so a lot of the faculty are taking advantage of that and using it in teaching. I don't know if they're going to, I would love to see them perform it again, since, you know, it's the college must. You must perform for colored girls in college.
Right.
But I think overall, a lot of college professors, people who teach college level students, are finding those gems that just add to the decades of conversation around this book. And even Ntozake Shange says, you know, she had to get used to seeing her baby out in the world being reinterpreted by people over and over. And Tyler Perry's just one of, you know, another one of them.
Right.
So in all, there are some Tyler Perryisms, but in all, I think to have broken open the poem and rearranged it and given, I didn't think that the rearrangement of the poem and giving lines to women that were not originally their lines in the book, or in the text, should I say, I didn't think that was inappropriate or weird. Right. I felt like, oh, good choice. You know, he really had to think, right? This was not a Medea autopilot thing for him.
Right.
And that's what I appreciate.
Right.
And again, some scenes were just, and it's partly, you know, the actresses, but some scenes were just effing brilliant. Macy Gray as the abortionist.
Yeah.
And she's just like, I grew up in Harlem around 5. It's like you're like cringing, like, and to me, that's a critique of a society that denies women authority over their own body. So I have to go to this crazy woman up in the, you know, in the back entrance,
back apartment, right?
Instead of just walking into a, you know, a safe, clean doctor's, because of other people's judgments.
And emotionally, I have to minimize myself. I have to myself. I have to go goodness.
Right. So
I have to be able to feel that it's my fault.
Right. That's right. And that's the line. I was pregnant and I was ashamed.
Right.
And that I mean, so I think I don't want to just get on that Tyler Perry criticism boat, that autopilot thing. Mm-hmm. I think this is his best film because it took the most from him.
Right.
It required the most of him.
Right.
And he rose to the I enjoy watching these women mm-hmm. put their foot in this literature. And so if people find the text hard to read because it's, written in sort of free verse and no capitals and sometimes no punctuation.
Right.
When you hear an actor who gets the meaning delivering it, it's like, yeah. So I think the benefits of seeing it performed well are that it helps you further understand the text. Mm-hmm. And for the people who never read the text, who see the film, to go back and read the text, particularly Ntozake Shange's sorts of introductions and her notes and discussion, it helps you understand the text better. Mm-hmm. So we want that. We want, like you were saying about Monster, if you see the film and you like it, you're going to run to the book, right? If you read the book and you like it, you're going to be engaged in the film and critique it in informed ways, right? So,
yes.
Now, did you see For Color Girls with people or by yourself?
I saw it by myself.
Okay, all right, yeah, so did I.
Yeah.
So yeah, I commend him for the job. Yeah, I did. Yes. So
because I wasn't, I guess, tainted by a lot of other Tyler Perry work.
Okay. Right.
No, I wasn't thinking about like, is this a Medea film?
No. Right.
I don't know why I wasn't thinking that, but I wasn't thinking about it at all. So
right.
And maybe because I was thinking more about the book.
Right.
Because the first time I ever saw it or ever remember hearing the title was through you.
Really?
And it's not that we were talking about it together. I was just an observer. So, but again,
I did not know.
Yeah. But this is what, and again, as an educator, I have to say, this is why what we do is so important. And this is why it's important for everyone to feel like they're an educator on some level, if not, formally, then informally. But we have to stop, hiding all the good stuff. And if we are in a position of power within any educational system, then we need to start dictating what is required. So if some of these books, some of this literature, some of these works were required, everyone would be able to converse and
right.
People would just be better off.
Right.
They'd be better thinkers. They'd be more empathetic. All of the things you want to raise, adults to be.
Right.
So, I am grateful for the fact that, filmmakers even take a shot at trying to capture a quality piece of work. But I think Tyler Perry, in creating additional characters, it says a lot about who he is creatively.
Okay.
And again, it's like, who gave you license to be that person? Who or when were you allowed to nurture that and to build that? So I think we definitely shouldn't, criticize adaptations, but critique them, like you said, right? Because criticizing them is just shooting them down, in my mind.
And usually with no information or
yeah, because it's the thing to do, but if we, could exercise a little bit more patience and then think before you speak, I think something more meaningful could be conveyed. It's just like giving a student feedback. You don't want to diminish their spirit and their creativity and their willingness to produce. So what you say to them in return about their work is crucial, and how you say it. So I think it's a necessary part of what we do in school. And a lot of times when we do read a novel or some work that has been adapted, and we can complement the lesson with a film, I like to do that. I like to do that because I want them to see both, and because I want them to be able to do this.
Right. Absolutely.
Conversation about what you've seen, So, and that can happen as young as pre-K, So,
yes,
it's a vital part of just exposure and experience,
And so that's really why I choose what I choose in that course. A lot of people were not familiar with Ntozake Shange. Perhaps they'd heard of Tyler Perry,
right?
But in taking my class, they have to actually read the text and watch the film. So it's like you're saying, you need to develop the skill of engaging both.
Yes.
So yeah. So yes, this was fabulous. Any final thoughts?
First of all, Sharon, it's been a pleasure.
Yes, fabulous.
I love talking about my work. But I have to, seriously, my final word is going to be thank you.
Oh, thank you. I love you too.
I love the fact that you brought me into this circle to be able to, help other people and expose other people.
Yeah.
You make them better one at a time, Shay.
Uh-oh, I try. Anyway, yes. So we are going to continue to jailbreak the Black classroom at every level. Jailbreak the Black university, jailbreak the Black middle school, high school. We are just going to continue. And so when we think of the next topic that we want to chit chat over, we will be back together.
Absolutely.
We twins, right?
Yeah, y'all twins.
Yes, it's been a pleasure, and we will speak and chomp it up soon. All right. Bye, my peoples.
Bye.
Bye.